Well, first off, I just want to say thank you guys for offering your time. I know everyone has busy schedules, but I think that this is important just because of the momentum we've, kind of started in this country, and a lot of discussions happening. And first of all, I'm just honored to speak to Sarge and to you, Jay Hay. This is definitely something that I've, been looking forward to since we started. So the first thing I wanted to start with, and, I'll toss it to Jay Hay first, is you've been known for your charitable efforts, and you've done a ton, recently. The last couple Thursdays you've been out in the field. And do you want to take us through some of those efforts and how you think that, some fans could get involved with some of your efforts?
Um, hmm, where to start? I mean, I just want to start by saying, I guess, right now is a little overwhelming for all of us as a Black person in this country, in the entertainment industry, just because, I would say now we're getting different attention than we've got. In recent history, everyone's coming to ask questions, everyone's coming to check in, and I'm not talking about it in a bad way. It's good attention, but now I feel like we're being called upon to make sure we take great aim in our next moves and make sure we all get together and be on the same page. So I want to say I appreciate you all for being here for that. But yesterday and last Thursday, myself, Sam Macho, Mitch Trubisky, Johnny Toes, there's some Ryan Arch from the Bulls. There've been guys, more athletes that have went on the west side of Chicago over in Austin, and nonprofit called By the Hand. They've presented a platform to go speak to kids in that community, bringing cops together as well, bringing idealists together. The alderman was over there. The mayor was over there the week before I went over there a couple weeks ago, just to get the conversation going and to listen, to bring people together and to allow them to understand we got to be on the same page, but we can do better by listening to the young people in the community, by letting them ask questions to the cops, letting the cops even share their side. And they're not all bad people. I mean, I have great relationships with many of them. And I think we just need to break the ice once and for all. It's been talked about. We hope it to happen. But right now, the world's speaking up, the country's speaking up. We need it to happen. So if people are interested, the nonprofit is By the Hand. It's ran by Danita. I don't remember her last name, but I'm just getting introduced to these people this week. But great people on the west side of Chicago. These kids are brilliant. They're hungry for positivity. They're hungry for that. They're hungry for knowledge. They're hungry for consistency in the leadership. And I feel like as athletes, as entertainers, as role models, that is our calling right now.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And, I'm someone that grew up over on the west side of Chicago. And, I mentioned this to a group of people in the organization that, if you met me today, you probably wouldn't think that's where I came from. And, that's through hard work and, networking, connections, and just getting to that being my path. So, Gary, I just wanted to ask you, just off the top, in your path, when you were coming up, do you have any stories that you might want to share about, racism or things that you faced, when you were starting your career and then through your career?
Well, I mean, throughout the minor leagues, obviously you run into a lot of different situations. I think one of the things personally for me that helped me was being around Willie Mays, getting a chance to know Hank Aaron and so on. They kind of really showed you the way. It was also a thing where, and Jason, you probably remember this, they always used to say, hey, you got to be twice as good. That was always there. Right. In the back of your mind that you had to be twice as good. So in other words, your work ethics then is going to just be off the top. There is no quit. There is no finish line. But I'm glad I got drafted in the first round because I saw what they did to some of my friends that at the time were even a better player that didn't get that opportunity. And that is a thing I think more so. I mean, I could go on and on from being in Little Rock, Arkansas, and having racial slurs and the rest of that. But again, that isn't a good thing. But for me right now, the thing that would help all of, and everyone, is the economically. I mean, Jim mentioned about having diversity, and then diversity with the people there in the office. Well, the same way should be really in the neighborhood. What can we do? What are we doing to sponsor, Cinco de Mayo Day, this particular day? How are we praising it? How many of the rest of the Black Negro players are coming there during the time when they can have them there and keeping the history alive? But economically and in sharing and bringing people in where they can bring in, their friends, or making sure that they help their friends, helping their family, making sure they go to school. We have to get more educated, as a race or Black people. And again, it's a fear factor, because there's a lot of people that just fear, Black people there. I mean, and the darker your skin, obviously, the more they fear you. Even being there in Chicago in '84, we had a hell of a year. I remember walking down Michigan, and that's back in the day, where you had your bag and so on. Well, I'm walking down Michigan getting ready to go shop, and I'll never forget it. This lady was on her left hand side, an elderly lady. Well, she grabbed her bag out in front. Hey, and I grabbed my bag out in front. And we just looked at each other, and I'm just saying, hey, I ain't trying to take your bag. I got my own bag. But it's just the fear factor that, hey, that has happened before. They're bad people in everything in all of our society. And the thing that we do, and especially in baseball, you bad long enough, you just won't be there. So in society and some of the other places, we got to weed people out. The bad ones, you got to weed out. We ain't going to continue to have somebody on your team and they're not getting anybody out or getting any hits. You'd be saying, oh, that just doesn't work. Well, the same thing in the different jobs. There was a reason why that young lady in New York was screaming the way that she did. Why? The fear factor that here's a Black man and I am scared to death. He's lucky he didn't get 10 or 12 cars out there on him. And this guy here going to Harvard and not breaking the law. All he was doing was bird watching. So I'm saying that to say that it happens in all aspects of it. But again, if we got to change different things, a lot of the Black communities I go to or have been through, in particularly here in Decatur, well, how do you expect for people to lose weight when every place on the corner is fried foods? It just doesn't work. They have to be educated, and we just have to economically get more companies there involved and so on. And it's just the opportunity. If you're a minority company, Black company, large company, if you go in and do a job, it's not the right job, you may not get a job again. Right. All we're doing is asking for the opportunity to be able to get there, to be able to bring other people around. And I've talked with a lot of different Black companies, women companies, and so on. I tell the story there, even with the Cubs, that I had an ad specialty company selling hats, T-shirts, etc. And I told that story to Jim. Well, once I got through playing in '84, I thought it'd be easy to walk in there and get it paid. Well, guess what? It took me almost 5 years before I got one day. But the fact is, once John got through talking with me, he said, man, not this year or whatever. And I said, hey, man, don't worry about it, though. I'll be back next year, same time. I'll have more stuff. And he kind of looked at me going like, yeah, I bet he will, too. Sure enough, and it's not always about getting, that particular job. It's getting in and getting an opportunity to bid on it. That's the opportunity. Don't give me anything. I don't want anything. I'm not needing for anything. The opportunity and economically, the way some of the other companies are, I think we'd have a whole different world.
Well, that's well said. And I wanted to share a quick story that, you kind of piqued my memory. I've lived in Lakeview since I was a sophomore in high school, so almost 10, 15 years. And one night I was coming home from a friend's place and I got pulled over, and I drove a hand-me-down Infiniti sports car, and I got pulled over for speeding. And the first thing the policeman said to me was, "What's a kid like you driving a car like this in this side of town?" And I have a grandfather who was 49 years in the police department. And, he taught me when I was young, he was like, be cordial, put your hands on the dash.
That's right.
Don't talk back. And I learned a lot of that young, so I knew how to handle the situation. But that kind of rhetoric and if you've ever been pulled over, that they should run your plates before they come to your car. And I was a block away from home, not even a mile. And I found that to be like, man, like we haven't made much progress. And now I feel like everyone is woken up and, people are sharing, even from 10 to 12-year-olds, they're starting to use their platform, albeit small. And I don't have a huge platform, but I wanted to ask Jason, being an African-American on the Cubs, present day, you've done a lot of charitable things. And what does it mean to you to have, as big a platform as you have in this city specifically, representing Chicago as an African-American male on the Cubs?
Ooh, I feel like there's a lot of weight with it. I'm from Georgia, just south of Atlanta, McDonough. I played 5 years there for my hometown team. I played in St. Louis for 1 year. And, I've been here for going on 5 now. And I feel like I've done some great things in other places, but here feels like home. The way people embrace me, my family and I, our team. I understand winning, cures everything, but still, I'm sure Gary's seen it as well. On the north side, fans look for positivity. And me being one of the figures, one of the leaders in the clubhouse, again, I feel like that carries weight. And, I try to go out and make sure I'm treating people with respect, treat people how I would like to be treated, how I want my kids to be treated. I just think it's a very eye-opening, unique situation. We have Javi Baez from Puerto Rico, Tony Rizzo, he's white Italian, Chris Bryant, Schwarber, Yu Darvish right now on our team, Quintana. We have a lot of guys, different demographics doing a lot of great things, but being an African-American and being, I guess you could say, the one right now, I got a job to do, and I feel like there's other people helping me do it in this city. There's other athletes, there's other people that have nonprofits I brought up by the hand. Jennifer Maddox on the South Side, she has Future Ties. So right now in my mind is continue to make these connections. Even with some police officers that I met over there on the West Side. And I'm going to try and get in touch with them this weekend and go meet up and just listen and continue to do my part so I can be, well rehearsed on what the issues look like, but I want them to see me. I want them to see, a Black person from McDonough, Georgia, embracing their city, embracing the youth and embracing the future and just someone who's going to appreciate what's happening, because we need people to bridge the gap. That's what we need. We need people to get a message across that is going to be understood and it's going to have perspective. And I feel like a lot of my teammates know me. They know who I am. They don't see me ever talk about race. They don't ever see me talk about that stuff. And it's something that's understood, right? But right now, I think is more important than all to just listen. But also, it's overwhelming and there's a lot of pressure, to say the right thing. But hey, get out there, take these chances and continue to use that voice in the right way.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I've struggled with the same thing. I don't call myself a celebrity or someone with a huge platform, but I feel like even if I can just offer perspective in my group of friends, whether it be college or growing up, just telling people what we go through on a day-to-day. I think I surprised a lot of people when I said, I'm still afraid of police in some areas. I don't really frequent certain areas if I don't have to because of that. And, I get rebuttals like, well, you have you had a policeman in your family. Like what would scare you about that? And it's like, well, he came up at a time where it wasn't even common for an African-American to be on the police force. So it's definitely a learning process for all. And I think that that's one of the most encouraging things for me is, the amount of young people who are willing to read and research and use their platform no matter what. I think it helps other people that don't look like you understand what you go through on a day-to-day. So next, I wanted to ask, and you guys can both answer this, what kind of advice would you give to young players in the game of baseball of color who are coming up today, who dream to have careers, like yourselves? I guess, Gary, you could start.
Wow. Well, I think, personally, I've always felt you should, when you're coming up, first of all, there is no quit. I mean, you gotta continue to work and so on your craft. I will say this, that you give it all you have, but believe me, it's God-given talent.
Mm-hmm.
You don't teach somebody to throw 100. You don't teach anybody to hit 100. Now, I can give you different little mechanics to be able to do this or do that, but there's a reason why, the one runner runs faster than the other, because God has given us, certain talents to be able to do. As a youngster, I say you believe in yourself. Never let anyone tell you that you can't do it. And just remember, in anything you're doing, there is no finish line. Continue to get better.
Jason?
Absolutely. I'm going to say it, started with a little bit different perspective socially. I'm going to say that they need to get well acquainted with their teammates, enjoy and embrace the diversity you have. In the minor leagues coming up, Latin players, having some, Japanese, guys that speak different languages, just get well acquainted with everyone, man.
Yeah.
Like you need to do that. So it's not only about, them getting to know you, it's about you getting to know them. Because once people see you and you have a reputation with them, people are able to say, okay, well, this is how you move. This is how it works. Then it becomes better in my mind. Because, like I said, about my teammates in my clubhouse, man, they know who I am. They know that I rock with them just like they rock with me. What's understood doesn't have to be explained. And I feel like a lot of times, guys aren't as comfortable having those icebreaker conversations. And, I get it, man. Like, baseball is a different kind of sport. Baseball is a sport where you see majority white players play growing up. And, that's one thing. But still, we're here. This is what we chose. We have a passion for the same thing they have. Use that to bring people together. And when it comes to the, on the field side, well, you do have to be better. You got to be better. I tell my brother, look, bro, like, I understand, you seen me go through stuff. He, wasn't, a high draft pick. He has worked his tail off. He went to University of Miami, all tournament team in the College World Series, went back-to-back College World Series, but he still knows that there's, adversity ahead of him. And I just want him to know that, look, like, when one door shuts, another door is going to have to open. Like, bro, you have to keep taking that door, closing in your face, keep taking that, nope. So what? All right, they told you no today, make them say yes tomorrow. And in my mind, as someone who was first rounder, hometown team, even earned the contract that I earned before coming to Chicago, signing with the Cubs, there's still things that I had to go through on a daily basis as a Black person, as a Black athlete, as an athlete. Yes, I understand we're not all like Sarge said. No, I'm not asking for any special treatment, but I just want an equal opportunity to go out there and be myself, be with my teammates, bring what I bring on a daily basis. So I need you to understand that and be willing to understand who I am and what I bring.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. Gary, did you have something you wanted to add? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and like with Jason, playing with the Cubs and playing down in the city in particularly, there is a passion that Cub fans have had, almost inbred it in them. And this is why you see so many little kids and teddy bears and so on that are there. And I just hope that there's some kind of way, whether or not it's camps or whatever, that we get more kids from Hispanics or color just involved there. Because again, and Jason, you can attest this, usually and including when I was playing, that when you were on the side, and I do it all the time, toss a ball out to the stands where I got to tell you, there's never ever usually 80% of the time any kids or whatever with color. There are little girls or whatever, but and we toss it, and not because of the color, but because you see that kid's eye and what it means to them when they get that ball. But sometimes in order to dream, we got to bring them down from the top, bring them down to the bottom, and let's see what that's all about.
I mean, you got to have the influence, right? You know, Gary Sheffield, 1997, we're in Atlanta. My parents got me tickets, go to a playoff game against them versus the Braves, Marlins versus Braves. And, you know, Gary threw my pops a ball during VP. You know, he saw, hey, you know, here's an African-American man, here's a black male, he's got a son next to him. I'm going to try and get him this baseball. And it worked out. And the thing is, it's not about, like you said, it's not about always doing that. But there are so few of us, there are so few opportunities like that. When they can happen, try to make it happen.
That's right.
Because if you don't make that happen, then it's not going to change. Nothing's going to change. More people are not going to come out to the game. You know, and what I'm getting at is it's on us as well as players. It's not just on the system. The system is screwed, yes. Like there's a lot of things that we would like to see change, but like that's going to help it change. If you get more people to show interest, you bring more people to the ball game and understand that like we can fit in here too. We can have a great time. Let's see what's going on the north side of Chicago, man. This is dope. You know, I played in Atlanta, and I will say, like, you know, I did feel at times, you know, from the organization that they didn't necessarily understand me. But to me, that's not something that I, you know, was new to. I watched that my whole life growing up. I watched Gary Sheffield come through there. I watched Fred McGriff. I watched Kenny Lofton. I watched Dave Justice. Right? I know I'm leaving people out, but Michael Tucker, I've seen people come through there and not stick. I mean, shoot, even Javi Lopez, Andrew Jones, you know. I mean, these dudes came through there, did a lot of great things, and they weren't really, you know, I don't want to say allowed to stay, but it was like, hey, like if you stay, you staying at this amount, you staying at this thing. And to me, it was very easy to see as a black child growing up that it wasn't going to be the same. And then so I got to see that side, and then I got to see the player side of it. So I can testify that there needs to be some change in it, and we got to do our part.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And, you know, I always go back to when I was very young and I was just starting T-ball here in Chicago. You know, it was easier for my family to take me and play on the west and south side because we weren't on the north side. And I went to T-ball, and, you know, I thank God for my dad every day because there was, you know, trash in the outfield and the grass was super high. And, you know, he pulled me right out of that league after one game. And he was like, I'm just going to have to drive you 35 minutes, 40 minutes up north so you can actually get a good situation. And I think that's one of the things that breaks my heart as I've become an adult, because I was afforded privileges based on my parents, you know, having the financial means to do that. Whereas a lot of people do not. And you know, it's easy to forget and just like pass over those things. So one of the things that I've decided personally is I do want to get more involved with, you know, helping run camps and help, you know, just show kids that maybe otherwise don't think that they have a chance to make it, that it doesn't matter where you're from or what you look like. If you have the talent and you have the desire to make it in this game, you know, the game of baseball will take you all over the world. And I'm living proof as someone that didn't even play. You know, I get a chance to be a face of some of these, you know, social ideas and, you know, things using my degree as an African-American male. Like, you know, it didn't really even hit me until late last year that I'm the first social media host in Cubs history. There's never been one. And, you know, I look like this, and I think that that's an honor. So I really appreciate, you know, the opportunity that I've had to just speak to you too, about these situations, because I think these conversations will help drive change in the future. And just to get a little more lighthearted here, I know everyone knows that, you know, we drafted Ed Heyward, hometown kid, went to Mount Carmel, who was in my conference when I played. So watching him go through the Little League World Series, with the Jackie Robinson West team happened when I was in the fan cave, and we were all over it. So Jason, I know that you've got experience in being, you know, drafted by your hometown team. If you had any advice for Ed Heyward, what would you give him?
I actually, did reach out to him. I did an interview on the Bigs a couple weeks ago. They asked me if I had any advice for him. Then it so happened that he came on the show, and then he got drafted by us, of course. But I reached out to him yesterday, let him know, hey, hit me up, man. Here's my number. Let me help you, be an avenue of, let me be a resource. I've been drafted by a hometown team. You're going to have to understand that, bro, this is home, yes, but this is also your job. This is your profession. You got to continue to love what you do and not let things get in the way of that. Because, again, bro, this is all going to look familiar for you. You're going to be driving down the street seeing things that, most of these places in the city of Chicago, you've been here before and people recognize you. But you got to have, I don't want to say have your guard up, but you got to have your psyche always on point. This is going to be a job, and it's going to be a mindset where, hey, like, I'm going here to play baseball. I want to be one of the leaders on this team, but also in this community, everybody's watching you. So embrace that and have fun with it.
And then, Gary, you're one of 7 father-son combinations in Cubs history with your son, Gary Matthews Jr. What was that like as you kind of offered advice to him and kind of laid, the groundwork for him as he came up and when he was, sent to the Cubs, what kind of conversations did you have about, playing for the city of Chicago?
Well, I mean, throughout his minor league and so on in career, I think as a dad that, you always want your son to do even better. I didn't really give him a lot of advice on this or that. I let Dusty Baker do that because he, as the dad, would always look at me more at the dad, but also we'd be saying the same thing. But once you get to the minor leagues and then you go from A-ball, double-A, and so on, well, let me tell you something. Everybody has credentials. Everybody has to got this going. I've been an All-American here. And I just told them, and at times, especially once I started broadcasting, that, hey, man, I said, I think you're taking too many fastballs, And then I joke with him. I said, hey, man, let me tell you something. I said, don't be giving me a bad name taking no 3-2 fastball. This or that. But, I make it light as well because I know how difficult, it is. And I think it's harder, on some of the sons that are coming up in the dad's footsteps because they always expect for you to do even more. I know in the minor leagues coming up, they used to call them, little corporal. Said, you haven't earned your Sarge stripes yet. And then you get to some of those father and sons where, the dads were great players, and particularly Bobby Bonds, his dad, Barry. I mean, Barry was twice as good as Bobby, and Bobby was a hell of a player. This guy would stand, he still bases standing up, and 30-30 was automatic. It was, and strike out 200 times and hit 300. How do you do that? Right. But, he just had a gift, and you look at Ken Griffey Sr. I see these kids and so on and coming up, and I honestly am not surprised especially Barry. He's doing the same thing, in Little League, in high school. I wasn't surprised at all. And just as cocky. And it takes a little bit of an edge. It does. Jason, yourself, you going up to that plate, man, you walking up there meaning business. And if you get you out there, you're going to go, ooh, man, how did I do that? It's a war, man. It's a war.
Well, I appreciate both of you guys very, very much. 2 people that I look up to. I think that we've made, just incremental progress today in starting these discussions. And I hope that we get to continue to push these forward as we are in this, challenging time. But, one thing that I've always, I've been saying the last couple of weeks is I'm hopeful because of the amount of young people that have really stepped up and the amount of people that don't look like you and I that have, stepped up to be, allies. I love that word ally. And just like you, Jason, like you mentioned having people reach out to you and text you and just see how you're doing. Like those things are maybe not so important back in a couple years ago, but you really, really feel the meaning nowadays, and you really see who's in your corner. So again, thank you guys so much for your time. I know you guys are very busy, and hopefully we get to have some more conversations like this in the future.
Hey, my pleasure. Had a good time. Thank you very much, man. Good luck too, Jason.
Appreciate you, Sarge. Thank you, man. Michael, thank you, bro. And congrats on that position, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Hopefully I'll see you around soon.
I'm with that. I'm with that.